Hello, I'm Andy Hudson from Sittingbourne and today I'm here to talk about housing on an unprecedented scale, which could see 80% of all new housing allocated in Sittingbourne. So regardless of where you live in Sittingbourne and the villages that surround it, this will impact you. It's really hard to understand any plans if no one ever bothers to provide any context. So possibly for the first time ever, I will attempt to break down where we are now, where we've come from, and where we might end up, so that you might make up your own mind. I was chatting to one of my neighbours the other day, and something he said caught my interest. He made the assumption that if Swale had the kind of impetus in terms of housing growth that Ashford had seen over the last few decades, we would attract significant inward investment and have the kind of facilities that Ashford now enjoys. I thought that was an interesting statement, and I started doing a bit of research, and I think he would be surprised at what I found. Kent County Council and Swale Borough Council have a whole bunch of statistics on housing, although I often found the figures didn't add up, they contradicted each other, and sometimes had been changed retrospectively. The two most interesting stats are the number of newly completed properties for each year, less any existing housing that was lost due to redevelopment, and an estimated housing stock figure. The records I could find commenced in the 1981 to 82 financial year, and the latest confirmed data available at the time that I'm making this video was at the end of March 2018. However, Swale Borough Council has been unable, for whatever reason, to attract anywhere remotely close to the same level of growth and investment as Ashford has seen either from central government or the private sector. So let's begin with where we are now. In Swale there are approximately 62,000 houses. I say approximately because this is one area where the figures reported to government and what I'm now being told simply don't add up. And no amount of pestering Swale Council for answers has provided any explanation. Looking at the three main towns of Sittingbourne, Faversham and Sheerness, Sittingbourne has 18,785 houses, Faversham 8,755 houses, and Sheerness 5,590. Although Sheerness isn't actually the largest town on the island, that would be Minster with 7,125 houses. If you broaden that out to include the surrounding areas, Sittingbourne has around 29,500 houses, Faversham 12,500 and Sheppey 20,000, and that equates roughly to a 48-20-32% split. So as you can see, Sittingbourne is already close to having 50% of the borough's housing stock. Now, let's take a brief look at our recent history. At the beginning of 1981, Swale had around 42,000 houses. So over the last 37 years of recorded housing completion data that I was able to obtain, Swale has now built some additional 20,000 houses. This averages out at 542 houses per year, and it's a position that regardless of housing targets set or planning permissions approved, that we are struggling to move away from. Okay, so that's a lot of information, and you might be wondering where I'm going with all of this and why any of it's relevant. Well, in an extraordinarily defiant move, considering the lack of any public support for the concept, the local Conservatives have made an election manifesto commitment to endorse the concept of garden towns, and are additionally supporting the development of a garden community between Bapchild and the Kent Science Park. This could result in upwards of 27,000 houses being added into the next local plan. That's equivalent to more than half a century's worth of housing growth in a 15-year period. That is a plan to grow Swale by around 44%, and 80% of that housing is destined for Sittingbourne. I would estimate that if this giant urbanisation of the villages of South Sittingbourne is brought forward, that the town of Sittingbourne will more than double in size. What will we get in return? a new motorway junction which causes severe problems for the M2, to the extent that there are now talks about the possibility of an M2 relief road, and a commitment for one new secondary school. Sure, there's going to be promises of new primary schools and doctors, surgeries, etc., but we're all well accustomed to the track record on delivering those. I can already envisage the protest from the Conservative Party that they aren't predetermining the local plan or any specific application that might be forthcoming, but there is only one scheme on the table that meets this criteria. So it's nothing short of a Conservative commitment to support the Queen Estates Highstead Park scheme, which together with the scheme for Wisest Lane in Borden will mean Queen Estates will be responsible for delivering half of the borough's new housing target. The Highstead Park proposals include for up to 12,500 houses. The figures do vary. You think about that for a moment. That's nearly 1.5 times the size of Faversham town centre and 2/3 the size of Sittingbourne in a single development. This goes way beyond meeting any government housing targets, and ironically could result in less affordable housing than we are providing now. Now, I'm not saying for one moment that this amount of housing will actually be delivered in a 15-year period. It won't. But adding the equivalent of 1,800 houses per annum into the next local plan provides housing developers with access to land they would never otherwise be able to obtain. The most housing that we've ever built in a single year was in 1988 to 1989, just prior to the housing crash. And in that period, we managed to construct 1,129 houses. It truly was a one-off event. And yet, starting in 2020-21, the council are predicting building 1,326 and then 1,462 and 1,216 houses in the following years. And that's without the garden town. Personally, I don't think that's credible, and this is a developer charter for ever-increasing housing targets set by the Conservatives in a plan to fail, and fail we will. Discover more on sittingbourne.me.